In this video, I'm going to talk you around my Unity calibration scene that I use when I'm working with shaders. Calibration scenes, or sometimes referred to as look dev scenes, are scenes where we have objective lighting and a variety of other tools that help us to calibrate or achieve the type of look that we are going for in our game. In this case, I've set this environment up specifically to work with shaders. And you'll see the main feature of this scene is this shader sphere, which is in the middle. A shader sphere, that every artist pretty much comes up with their own at some point. The shader sphere is designed to show off a material in a variety of different scenarios just on one object. So rather than just having a spherical object, this object has got hard edges, it's got multiple objects, it's got steps, right angles, all that kind of stuff that allow us to see how a material behaves as the object's form changes. So rather than having to put some cubes and some spheres and some triangle, some other sort of 3D forms in the scene, I can just view it on one object essentially. So that's what this does. And I've shared with you this particular shadable on the Moodle course. There are 3 different variations of the shadable. I'm just going to use this one, but there is a version with smooth UVs which looks like this, and you'll see in this instance the UV wraps around the right angle faces of the object. Some people might describe this UV as being incorrect or distorted or warped, but we'll see why this type of UV is beneficial at some point during the next set of videos. And there is another one which is a little bit more dense, so there's a repeating material on this shadable. Okay, so the rest of the scene, let's talk through the other elements. So there is a camera which is pretty much locked down. I can't rotate it and such, and this is in Unity. There is a really fantastic camera system, a cinematic camera system called Cine Machine, and you don't need to worry too much about using Cine Machine. In fact, probably most of you won't. However, it just allows you to set up multiple cameras and dynamically shift between them. In this case, I've got a second camera down here called Render Cam, and the main camera is locked to this Render Cam. I have a directional light which is behaving as my main light in the scene, as the sunlight. And there is a global volume which is currently turned off. The global volume adds a variety of post-processing effects such as tone mapping, although this is currently turned off. Generally we would tend to use an ACES tone mapping, but the problem with using post-processing when you're working with shaders is you can't view the shader or the material that it produces objectively. So it's best practice to turn any of your post-processing off. There is a ground plane, which is this grid pattern that you can see in the background of the scene. And this is set up just to give me sort of measurement details. Like if I'm working with a material, for example, that is meant to be, I've taken a photograph of a 1 meter square feature outside, then this just allows me to create some kind of measurement in the scene for that. So how large is 1 meter, for example? In this case, in this scene, each one of these dark blue squares is 20 centimeters. So it takes 5 squares to make 1 meter, essentially. I also have a canvas, and the canvas is the Unity UI. It's part of the Unity UI system. And in the canvas, I've just got my little moniker down there, so you can turn that off and on. I would encourage you, if you're doing this type of work regularly, to make sure you sign your work, you stick your signature in there. Obviously we operate at a time where AI is being trained on most of our works, so it's very important that you stick your moniker on there if you can. And the UI in either Unreal, Godot or Unity is the perfect tool to do that, and you can turn it off if you don't want it. Additionally, what I've got here is I've got a couple of spheres up here that are reflecting the environment. So I've got some environment mapping. So if I go into my lighting tab, I have a skybox set up. All right, so we can increase the intensity of the skybox so you can see the impact that this has. And one of these is reflecting, so it's like a chrome sphere. It's reflecting the skybox. And this might be the type of thing that if you were going out and capturing a skybox, maybe even for this module, you would there are a couple of ways of doing it, but one of the most frequently used methods is to use a chrome sphere, and you photograph it from a long distance away with a telephoto lens. And the chrome sphere basically just gives us an indication of what the environment looks like. This sphere is a white sphere, and it's just showing the impact of that lighting environment of the skybox on a plain white matte sphere. Okay, this little board of colours, this is called a Macbeth colour chart. You'll hear them referred to as other things, but it's a Macbeth colour chart, and this is a photograph that I've taken of a Macbeth colour chart. Specifically, it's my Macbeth colour chart, so I'll bring it in if I remember to the next session. And this is for if you're doing material collection or if you're getting reference information outdoors. Quite often we will be shooting with our phone cameras, or we might be shooting with a camera that, where we haven't set up the exposure correctly and all that kind of stuff. And what the Macbeth colour chart allows you to do is you can put it in the scene when you're taking a photograph of a particular texture in the real world. And you can bring it into Photoshop, and you can make adjustments in Photoshop to match it up as closely as possible to the real colour chart that you have in your hands. And this is really, really vital tool for calibration, specifically with real world materials that we might develop. So this is quite a handy thing to have in the scene if you're trying to match the shader up in Unity to a real world piece of primary research that you've done. Okay, so that's really, really handy. You can book out Macbeth colour charts, by the way, from the Media Hub. These are parented to the camera, so I have a little sub-object over here called Calibration, so I can turn them off if they're really annoying. So I don't always have to have them in there. Okay. Quite often, if you were doing if you're over in Cave, for example, or if you were doing a visual effects or like a high-end rendering course, you would generally be expected to include these in your look dev scenes. Okay, so other than that, we've got a very standard setup in Unity. The screen here is rendering at 2048 by 2048, so I can screenshot this, and I know if it's at 100% that it's 2048 by 2048. Might need to make some room to be able to screen grab a render of that. But also, if I use the inbuilt recording tool in Unity, which is down here, then I know it's going to record at 2048 by 2048. So any screenshots I take within the application will output at that resolution. Obviously, we can change that if you have different needs, and obviously when you come to render your final outputs, you might be wanting a widescreen or cinematic format. Okay, that's it for this particular video. The next video, we will go on to creating a shader using the Unity shader graph.